Okay, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Up until about the past 2 years, I really didn't pay much mind or attention to any sort of nighttime routine or even the quality of my sleep for that matter. Over the past few years, I've really been focusing on romanticizing my nighttime routine as I found that it has directly improved my quality of sleep and overall, it just makes me feel better. That is where the Skims pajamas come into play. I'm sure you guys have heard all about the Skims pajama sets by now. Everyone is talking about them. And let me tell you, the hype is so real. The quality is unlike anything I've ever felt before. It's a buttery, soft, luxurious fabric that makes you feel cozy while also looking cute and put together. And with the holidays coming up, the Skims pajamas are the perfect gift to give to anyone in your life so they can stay cozy all year round. So shop my favorite pajamas at skims.com. After you place your order, be sure to let them know that we sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for everyone on your list, the Skims holiday shop is now open at skims.com. Have you guys ever experienced that these are my last pair of contacts panic? Because I know I have, and let me tell you, it is never a good feeling. Or worse, if you're completely out of your contacts and you're stuck wearing your glasses that you haven't touched in years, you don't know where they are, it's always a hassle. But luckily with 1-800-CONTACTS, I don't have to worry about that anymore, and you don't have to either. For over 30 years, 1-800-CONTACTS has been the leader in online contact lens delivery with millions of contacts in stock and award-winning customer service. Here is what sets them apart from everyone else. They offer fast, free shipping on every order and have over 100 million contacts in stock ready to ship from their distribution centers all across the country. There's also free returns and exchanges, which means that you can order confidently, and they even offer unbeatable perks like free torn lens replacement. They even provide a way to renew your contact lens prescription from home with their online vision express exam. It takes less than 10 minutes and gives you a doctor-issued prescription that you can use to buy your contact lenses. No other major retailer makes prescription renewal this easy. Their best price guarantee means if you find your contacts at a lower price elsewhere, they'll beat it. That's a promise that you cannot find everywhere. 1-800-CONTACTS truly has mastered the art of simplifying your contact lenses, and I couldn't be happier. No one wants to have to deal with vision issues. It's just annoying and inconvenient, but luckily 1-800-CONTACTS makes that process seamless and smooth. Getting contacts doesn't have to be a hassle. Let 1-800-CONTACTS get you the contact lens you need right now. Order online at 1-800-CONTACTS.com or download the free 1-800-CONTACTS app today. Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. And before we get started, take a second, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you have not already. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You guys are not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version of the podcast on YouTube on Wednesdays as well. So make sure you are subscribed. And if you're looking for more exclusive Killer Instinct content, you can always find that over on our Patreon. The link is always in the description box below. We post an additional 3 episodes a month over on Patreon, and we end the month with an exclusive live stream as well. So make sure you click the link in the description to check that out if you have not already. But with that being said, you guys, let's talk about why we're here today. As you guys can tell by the title of today's episode, today we are talking about the brutal murder of a woman named Kay Parsons. This is a case truly that took me by surprise. It is going to have you absolutely shocked. It is a brutal case of betrayal and a tragic, horrifying murder. So with that being said, let's jump right on into it today. Kay Parsons was born on February 11th, 1968 in Fayetteville County, Pennsylvania to her parents, Arthur and Mabel. She graduated from Laurel Highlands High School in 1987 1997 and later went on to marry her husband, a man named David Parsons, who was her high school sweetheart. Together, the two had a son named Derek, who was Kay's entire world. Kay was an incredibly devoted, hands-on mother. It was said that she was the one that was always at the sports games, always helping him with school projects. She put Derek on a pedestal. Kay was also a very active member of her church, and together, Kay, David, and Derek were living in Grovetown, Georgia at the time that this case took place in 2009, and the three of them were said to be known as a very loving family. From the outside looking in, everything looked picture perfect. Kay and David seemed to have a loving relationship and a loving marriage. It seemed like they were a happy family. They lived in a great area, but soon everything would come crashing down. This case begins on March 25th in 2009 when the Columbia County 911 dispatchers received a phone call at approximately 9 a.m. from a man named Mitchell Cozart. Now, Mitchell was actually the handyman who worked for the Parsons family. He worked for Kay and David, and he was scheduled to go over on the morning of March 25th to do some handyman work around the house. However, when he arrived and knocked on the front door and no one answered, that is when he went around the back of the house, and he was very concerned when he saw the back door, the glass of the sliding back door had been shattered everywhere. He claimed that he called out for Kay and David multiple times but did not get an answer, so that is when he decided to call 911. Now, police arrived on the scene within minutes, and when they entered the home, they could see that this home had been absolutely ransacked. It seemed like the house had been flipped upside down. There were drawers pulled out in the house. There was furniture that was flipped over. Mattresses were turned over. And the more police walked through the home, they also discovered blood spatter on the walls and the floor, which when they followed that trail, it led them to the garage of the home, and that is when they discovered Kay Parsons' body lying on the floor of her garage. When police found Kay's body, she was completely covered in blood, and laying right beside her was a hammer and a baseball bat, which police believed to be the weapon used. Kay's body was found right next to her car, which was parked inside of the garage, and based on the sequence of how the house looked, police believed that it was very likely that Kay was trying to make a run for it when she met her attacker. They felt like she was getting attacked in the home. That is where the attack began, and she ran out to the garage to either try and run away or to get in her car and leave. Now, when police discovered Kay's body, she did have a faint pulse, so police quickly got the ambulance and paramedics over there, and she was rushed over to the hospital with hopes that doctors would be able to save her life. Now, as that was happening, police continued canvassing the home and continuing on their investigation to figure out what exactly happened here. Now, when they were canvassing Kay's neighborhood, they learned that this was a very well-kept neighborhood. This was not a neighborhood where a lot of crime took place. This was generally considered to be a very safe area, which is why it was even more alarming when police learned that there was another home right next door to the Parsons that had also been broken into that same morning. Now, luckily, the owners of this home, the Sears family, were not home at the time that their house was burglarized, so no one in the Sears family was injured. In the home of the Sears, you had husband and wife, Becky and Tony Sears, and their 3 sons. Now, Becky also had 2 older sons from a previous marriage. She had her son Michael, who was her oldest, and while Michael lived in the home with Becky and Tony and the 3 younger sons, Christopher did not. They were both young adults at this point, so they were able to go off and live on their own. And while Christopher did do that, Michael still lived at the home with his mom, Tony, and the 3 younger boys. Now, similarly to the Parsons home, the Sears home looked incredibly ransacked. It was, again, a very similar scene. Furniture was flipped over, mattresses were flipped over, the drawers were all pulled out. It seemed like clothes were everywhere, and there were as well drops of blood found on the back door of the home, which told police that this had to have been the same offender who broke into the Parsons home. So going with the theory that this was the same offender who burglarized the Sears home as well as the burglary and attack on Kay at the Parsons home, police were starting to get a little bit confused because they were trying to understand the sequence of events here. From their perspective, when they were thinking about a burglary, if you broke into a home, typically you would think that you would want to break into the home, get whatever belongings you could, and then run away as far and as fast as you could to get away from the scene. However, for some reason, this offender, decided to commit one burglary and then go next door and commit another one right afterwards. And it just didn't really make a lot of sense. And because of that fact, police were now believing that these burglaries were not random, but they were personal attacks. So with the belief that these were personal attacks and targeted attacks against the Sears and the Parsons, police wanted to have a better understanding of these families. And when they started to learn more, they learned that the Sears and the Parsons were very, very close. They were very close friends. They spent a lot of time together when they became neighbors, and they became instant friends. They all played tennis together. The kids were around the same age. The adults, the couples, were very close friends as well. And when police discovered the burglary in the Sears home, they reached out to Becky Sears, who raced home to be on the scene. And really, Becky didn't have any care about her own home. She didn't ask about her own home. The only thing that she was concerned about was Kay. She was concerned about Kay's well-being. She was concerned about Kay's condition. She kept asking police, how is Kay? Is she all right? What's going on? It was really the only thing on her mind. And after speaking to authorities and telling them everything that they needed to know in relation to her own home and her own family, she quickly got into the car and rushed to the hospital to be by Kay's side. Now, at the time that this attack took place, David, Kay's husband, he was actually in California on a business trip. So he was not in town at the time of the attack, and police had to call him and inform him of his wife's condition. Now, upon David hearing this news, he immediately booked a flight and flew back home to Georgia and went straight to the hospital to be by his wife. And when he got there, he learned from the doctors that sadly, Kay had no brain activity and she was officially declared brain dead. So because of that, David made the decision to take Kay off of life support, and she died on March 26th of 2009. So with that, this case was now changing from an assault and burglary to a murder, and police were now focused on who killed Kay. And to do that, they really had to start from the beginning in this case. And so they started by speaking to Mitchell Cozart, who was the handyman who made the 911 call. Police sat down with Mitchell, and he told them that he arrived at the Parsons home on March 25th at approximately 8:45 a.m. that morning. He stated that while he was making the 911 call to police after he found the glass shattered in the back of the house, he noticed that there was a young adult male sitting across the street from the Parsons home on a rock. So Mitchell said that when he called 911, he was in the front of the home. He was in the driveway, and he looks across the street, and there's a young adult male sitting across the street on a rock, just outside, watching the home, it seemed. Now, police were able to figure out that this young man was Michael Bowers, which was Becky's son. And again, Becky took Tony's last name, which is why she's Becky Sears, but Michael is Michael Bowers. So this was Becky's eldest son that's being identified as sitting across the street when this 911 call was being made. Now, police did remember speaking with Michael on the scene. He was there when they arrived. And again, he did live in the house with his mom. And so police are now trying to understand where Michael falls into this dynamic. And when police were speaking with Michael, one of the things that police asked Michael to do was lift up his shoes and show them the bottom of his shoes. Because when police were asking him to do this, they were doing it with the purpose of seeing if Michael had any shards of glass in his shoes that could be consistent with the glass that was found broken in either the Parsons home or his own. And they actually did find broken shards of glass in his shoes, and it raised red flags to authorities, and it made them want to question Michael further. However, before they were able to do that, and just 36 hours after Kay was murdered, the Augusta, Georgia Police Department received a 911 call from a woman who claimed that while she was leaving work, a man came out from the trees behind her office building at work and shot her in the leg. So there is this woman who's calling 911 saying that she has been shot in the leg approximately 36 hours after Kay Parsons has been murdered. And you want to know who the woman was who called 911 to report that she had been shot? It was Becky Sears, Kay Parsons' best friend and next door neighbor. So Becky is now calling 911 to claim that she had been shot in the leg. And as you can imagine, this is adding more confusion, red flags, and suspicion to authorities. Police were wondering what on earth was really happening here. And when police arrived at the scene and saw Becky, she told them that she was shot by an unknown male who told her after the shooting that if he didn't get his money the next time, he would shoot her in the face. Now, Becky claimed that she did not know what this man was talking about. She didn't know who this man was. This was an unknown male. But having this attack on Becky only furthered police speculation that the attack on Kay and the burglary of the Sears home had to have been a targeted attack. These were not just coincidences. Now, Becky, like I said, was shot right outside of her work, which was her physical therapy office, and luckily the bullet only grazed her leg and she was able to recover. But the connection here, again, just seemed too coincidental to be a coincidence. So police go back and look at Michael at this point, who was already on their radar. And not only were they looking at Michael, but they wanted to take a closer look at the Sears dynamic as a whole. Now, when they did this, they learned that Michael had been arrested multiple times over the years for drug-related charges. It seemed like he did have a problem with specifically meth. He had gone to several rehab centers for it in the past. And all in all, Michael just seemed to struggle because he was more of the problem child out of him and his brother Christopher. Christopher was younger. He had gone off. He had gotten a house. He had gotten a job. And he really did seem like he was figuring his life out. But Michael always seemed to be the one who was struggling. He was a little bit of the black sheep of the family. And when speaking to friends of the Sears, they claimed that Becky was getting a little bit fed up with Michael's behavior. It seemed like she had consistently tried to be there and help him throughout the years. However, nothing was working and it didn't seem like Michael wanted to change his ways, so she was planning on kicking him out of the home. Now, when police heard this, they wondered if this could be a potential motive for Michael wanting to stage an attack on not only Kay, but his own mother. So, police brought Michael into the station to conduct an interview. Now, during this interview, Michael was open to police about the fact that he had taken meth that very day, the day that the interview was taking place. However, he claimed that he had no knowledge about anything pertaining to Kay or his mom. But police couldn't shake away the theory that maybe Michael wasn't directly involved, but maybe there was something going on here. Maybe there was a drug deal gone bad and the robbery was retaliation, and if drugs really were the motive for the murder of Kay and the attack on Becky. But just 2 days after Kay's murder, so again, this is all happening within a very short time frame, 2 days after Kay's murder and just about 12 hours after Becky had been shot, police received another phone call, and this phone call was from prison staff who informed police that there was an inmate named Jerry Jacobs who was in prison for a minor traffic violation, who claimed that he had seen the news about Kay and about Becky, because at this point, this was plastered on the news everywhere. The media outlets were running rampant with this case, and everyone was trying to figure out what was really going on here. However, this inmate, Jerry, claimed that he had information that police might find useful in their investigation. So, police set up an interview with Jerry Jacobs, and they sat down with him in an interview room. And one of the first things that Jerry tells detectives is that he believes that his own sister is involved in the murder of Kay Parsons. Okay, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Up until about the past 2 years, I really didn't pay much mind or attention to any sort of nighttime routine or even the quality of my sleep for that matter. I was throwing on whatever mismatched sweatpants and sweatshirt that for whatever reason still had holes in it, just throwing my hair up and going to bed. But over the past few years, I've really been focusing on romanticizing my nighttime routine as I found that it has directly improved my quality of sleep and overall it just makes me feel better. And for me, what I'm wearing to bed plays such a huge role in that. And that is where these Skims pajamas come into play. I'm sure you guys have heard all about the Skims pajama sets by now. Everyone is talking about them. And let me tell you, the hype is so real. The quality is unlike anything I've ever felt before. It's a buttery, soft, luxurious fabric that makes you feel cozy while also looking cute and put together. They have so many different colors and fabrics and patterns. There is something for everyone out there. I have been living in my Skims pajama sets recently. I just rotate them out. And from the time that I take them off in the morning, I truly look forward to putting them back on again at night. And with the holidays coming up, the Skims pajamas are the perfect gift to give to anyone in your life so they can stay cozy all year round. So shop my favorite pajamas at skims.com. After you place your order, be sure to let them know that we sent you. Select podcast in the survey and be sure to select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for everyone on your list, the Skims holiday shop is now open at skims.com. Have you guys ever experienced that these are my last pair of contacts panic? Because I know I have, and let me tell you, it is never a good feeling. Or worse, if you're completely out of your contacts and you're stuck wearing your glasses that you haven't touched in years, you don't know where they are, it's always a hassle. But luckily with 1-800-CONTACTS, I don't have to worry about that anymore, and you don't have to either. 1-800-CONTACTS is the only major contact lens retailer that lets me renew my prescription online so I can get my contacts quickly. 1-800-CONTACTS has fast, free shipping and delivers the same contacts my doctor prescribes right to my door, all without ever leaving my home. For over 30 years, 1-800-CONTACTS has been the leader in online contact lens delivery with millions of contacts in stock and award-winning customer service. Here is what sets them apart from everyone else. They offer fast, free shipping on every order and have over 100 million contacts in stock ready to ship from their distribution centers all across the country. There's also free returns and exchanges, which means that you can order confidently, and they even offer unbeatable perks like free torn lens replacement. They even provide a way to renew your contact lens prescription from home with their online vision exam, Express Exam. It takes less than 10 minutes and gives you a doctor-issued prescription that you can use to buy your contact lenses. No other major retailer makes prescription renewal this easy. Their best price guarantee means if you find your contacts at a lower price elsewhere, they'll beat it. That's a promise that you cannot find everywhere. 1-800-CONTACTS truly has mastered the art of simplifying your contact lenses, and I couldn't be happier. No one wants to have to deal with vision issues. It's just annoying and inconvenient, but luckily, 1-800-CONTACTS makes that process seamless and smooth. If you hate running out of contacts or having to make an eye doctor appointment every time you're running low, which, let's face it, everyone hates that, then 1-800-CONTACTS is the best solution. They will save you time and money. Getting contacts doesn't have to be a hassle. Let 1-800-CONTACTS get you the contact lens you need right now. Order online at 1-800-CONTACTS.com or download the free 1-800-CONTACTS app today. Now you might be asking, who is Jerry's sister? Well, that would be none other than Becky Sears. Becky Sears is the sister of Jerry Jacobs. Jerry went on to say that Becky had confessed to him in the months leading up to the murder that she was having an affair with Kay's husband, David. But not only that, not only did Kay confess to the affair, she also told Jerry that her and David both wanted Kay out of the picture and even asked Jerry if he had any suggestions on how to kill Kay and make it look like an accident. Now, initially, Jerry said that when they were having this conversation, he thought that Becky was just not thinking rationally, that she wasn't serious. She she was just talking and she wasn't meaning what she was saying. However, he said that Becky doubled down and even asked Jerry if he would kill Kay himself, to which he said no. Jerry said that after that conversation, they never really spoke of it again. And again, he just figured that Becky was just talking. He didn't think that it was anything serious. He didn't think it was anything that Becky would actually follow through with. However, when he was seeing everything unfold in the news, that is when he realized that his sister might have been more serious than he thought. So this was a huge breakthrough in this investigation. And even though police are now getting a mountain of new information regarding Kay and Becky and David and everything that's going on here, they still have a lot more questions. And in order to get some answers to those questions, police sit down with David Parsons. Now, the lead detective claimed that when he was sitting down with David, the very first question that he gave David was not as much of a question as it was a statement. And that statement was, "Tell me about the affair between you and Becky Sears." Now, according to this detective, he claimed that when David heard this statement, David just dropped his head and looked defeated. But he didn't deny the affair. David claimed that the affair had began the summer prior, so the summer of 2008, and that Becky had made some flirty comments in their tennis matches. This is how it began. There were some flirty comments made between Becky and David back and forth in their tennis matches, and how Becky was blaming her inability to play tennis on the fact that she was distracted by David's good looks. Now, this then opened the door to multiple flirty comments back and forth, which then led to text messages, which led to phone calls, and eventually it led to seeing each other in person. David claimed that they would go over to each other's houses when their spouses were away, and David said that over time he could tell that Becky was growing an obsession with him and was obsessed with the idea of them being together. Now, David told authorities that he never really saw himself being with Becky. He never saw himself ending his marriage with Kay and going on and being with Becky, but he was just in it for the affair itself. Now, David said that this affair went on for several months before ultimately Becky had actually told her husband Tony about the affair, which when David heard that, he got very frustrated with that. He got very upset with that because according to David, he felt that Becky telling Tony she was only doing so with the intention of leaving Tony to be with David. And David had no intention of telling Kay, so he just decided to cut things off with Becky all in all. He said that things were getting too serious, Becky was getting too serious, and he decided to just cut things off. So he claimed that he ended the affair on February 18th, which was just a little over a month before Kay's murder. However, police did not let David off the hook so easily because they confronted David with some phone records that showed that the night prior to Kay's murder, so on March 24th, he and Becky were on the phone together. David and Becky were on the phone together. And at first, David just claimed that this was an innocent phone call and that there was nothing to it. However, after further pressing, David revealed that him and Becky had phone sex that night. Now, even though David did have an alibi, he was in California on a business trip on the day that Kay was attacked, authorities were not convinced that he did not have any involvement whatsoever. They almost, if anything, felt like it was a little too convenient that David would be on a business trip during Kay's attack. However, David was very adamant that he was not responsible. He said that he had messed up by having the affair. He shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. He admitted his fault in that regard, but he said that he never had any intention or involvement in Kay's attack and what ultimately led to be her murder. And after authorities had interrogated and interviewed David multiple times, they did end up leaning more towards believing that David was not responsible. And detectives have never revealed what the details were that led them to that conclusion. However, what they have said is that in David's interrogations, he ended up revealing things about himself that would be considered to be vulnerable and somewhat shameful and embarrassing, things that he would not want to have to admit in order to prove his innocence. And it made authorities believe that he was being truthful with them. So that, along with the fact that he was gone and he wasn't in town, he was in California. And along with that, they didn't have any evidence that tied David to the crime itself. So because of that, they had to move on in their investigation. Now, during the conversation that he had with detectives, David told them about the fact that Becky was open with her husband about the affair. But when asked if anyone else knew about the affair, David told them that Becky's younger son, Christopher, also had knowledge of the affair. Becky had told Christopher about the affair between her and David. So this opened up more theories for authorities, because now with the knowledge that Christopher knew about the affair, it led police to wonder, what else did he know? And along with that, in Jerry's conversation, Becky's brother's conversation with authorities, he also claimed that Becky had almost no boundaries when it came to her relationship with her son Christopher and what she shared with Christopher. Jerry claimed that Becky would call Christopher almost nightly to discuss the marital issues that she was experiencing with Tony, and also told him about how much she wanted to be with David. And the more police kept learning about Christopher and Michael, they learned that Christopher actually had a lot more knowledge about the dynamic between Becky and David and Tony than Michael ever did. Christopher was the one who was consistently talking to his mom. He was the one with knowledge as to the affair and his mom's feelings about her marriage and David. So because of that, police started shifting their focus from Michael to Christopher. And when taking a closer look at Christopher, police started to uncover an odd dynamic between him and his mom, Becky. All of Christopher's family and friends claimed that Christopher was always a mama's boy, so to speak, but it was almost to an extreme level. And even as he got older, the bond grew even more and more bizarre. Anything that Christopher wanted, he got, whether it was a car or a house. However, that was met with a contingency on Becky's end, which was that anything that Becky wanted from Christopher, he would do. Now, similarly to Michael having a history with drug problems, Christopher also did. Christopher specifically had issues with Oxy and Xanax, and it was said that Becky would actually fuel this issue that Christopher had. She would buy these pills, these prescription drugs for her son, and over time, Christopher became addicted to them. So Becky was really fueling her son's addiction, and police were now believing that Becky was actually using the drugs as leverage and almost using them transactionally. So she would give Christopher the drugs under the condition that he was doing what she asked of him. And by getting him addicted to these over time, obviously Christopher was going to do whatever his mom asked in order to get the drugs that he felt he needed. Now, with all the information that they had gathered, police did move forward with conducting separate interviews of both Becky and Christopher. Now, when police sat down with Christopher, he immediately lawyered up. He refused to speak to authorities, but Becky, on the other hand, she was actually very willing to talk, and it took her no time at all before she completely turned on her son and told authorities that she believed that Christopher was responsible for what happened to Kay, because Becky admitted that she made Christopher believe that she wanted to hurt somebody when in reality she didn't. So what Becky is basically telling authorities is that she told Christopher that she wanted Kay gone, she wanted Kay out of the picture, and now Becky's saying that she thinks that Christopher actually took her seriously and might have acted on that. Now, Becky went on to say that in the early hours of March 25th, 2009, the day that the burglaries took place and the day that Kay was attacked, she actually picked Christopher up from his house because Christopher was the only one who did not live at home. And she brought Christopher back to her home where they hung out for the morning. Becky said she left that morning to take her other 3 sons to school and that Christopher was the only one at home at the time. Now, like I mentioned, the Sears and the Parsons, they had children around the same age. Kay's son was a similar age to Becky's younger 3 children, so they usually took the kids to school around the same time. So Kay also left that morning around the same time that Becky did to take Derek to school as well. Now, according to Becky, she said that before she left that morning, she did have a conversation with Christopher and told him to just stay home until she came back. And according to Becky, she claimed that Christopher retaliated, telling her that he was going to do whatever he wanted to do, and she was telling Christopher that he didn't have to do anything. Now, it seems like Becky was implying something without actually saying it. It seems like she was possibly implying that she was telling Christopher not to do anything, meaning not to make any action or not to take any action or just to stay at home, stay put, don't make any crazy decisions. However, Becky said that it was implied that Christopher was going to go to Kay's house because she knew that he was going to do whatever he had to do to make her happy. Becky said that the conversations between her and Christopher were kind of amping up regarding Becky's feelings towards David and Kay, how Becky wanted to be with David and she also wanted Kay out of the picture. It seemed like those conversations were happening at a more consistent basis and a more frequent basis. And so when Becky left Christopher at the house that morning, she told him, don't do anything. You don't need to do anything. You just stay here. Whereas Christopher said, well, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Now, again, it was later that morning when Becky received a phone call saying that Kay had been attacked and that her own home had been burglarized. And when she raced home and saw Christopher, she asked Christopher what had happened. And Christopher told Becky, allegedly, I beat the shit out of her. Now, police did not believe this story whatsoever. Police did not believe that Becky tried to stop Christopher, that Becky tried to hold him back, or tried to interfere between him going over to Kay's house for several reasons. First one being, why would Christopher go over to Becky's house that morning? Why would Becky pick Christopher up from his own house and bring him to her home that morning and then leave him there while she goes and takes her other children to school, knowing that there is an ample opportunity for him to do something if he wanted to? There was ample opportunity for him to act on what they had been talking about for so long, which was allegedly getting Kay out of the picture. And more than that, police actually believed that Becky was definitely orchestrating this. They believed that Christopher was brought over by Becky to her home that morning with the sole purpose of attacking Kay. It's believed that Becky told Christopher when she left to take her other kids to school to hop the fence, go over to Kay's home, wait for her to come home, attack, murder her, stage it as a burglary, and then go back to their own home and stage that as a robbery as well to make it appear less suspicious, when in all reality, it only made them look 10 times more suspicious. Police believe that Becky was the mastermind behind all of this, that she was narcissistic, calculated, and was throwing Christopher under the bus after manipulating him to do her dirty work. But you might be sitting here still having one big question, which is, who shot Becky? I know we kind of glossed over that earlier. After Becky had been shot in the leg, she told police that there was something about money involved. The shooter told her that he needed money, and if she didn't give it to him, that she was going to be shot in the head. What was that all about? Well, when sitting down with authorities, and according to Becky, she admitted that that shooting was staged by her and Christopher because she felt like police were starting to look at them a little too closely. So she admitted that the whole thing was a setup, and Becky actually said that the plan was not for her to be shot at all. The plan was just for Christopher to shoot the gun in her direction, and she would call saying that she had been shot at, when in reality, she actually did get shot. The bullet grazed her leg, so it did hit her, but she said that that was not a part of the plan. So with all of this information that had been collected, police arrested both Christopher and Becky and charged them with the murder of Kay Parsons. Both pled not guilty to burglary, armed robbery, malice murder, and felony murder. Prosecutors were seeking the death penalty for both of them, and when that decision was made, it then separated Christopher and Becky as two separate defendants, which meant that they were getting two separate trials. So now it was mother versus son. that's how this was shaped out to be. However, at this time, Becky had her attorneys reach out to the prosecution and let them know that she could give them information as to where the bloody clothes that Christopher was wearing at the time of the murder were being hidden. And in exchange for that information, they wanted the death penalty taken off the table. So the prosecution agreed to this because it strengthened their case against Christopher, and Becky informed them that there was a backpack full of Christopher's bloody clothing located in Becky's mother's home in the attic. Now, police fact-checked this, and in fact, they did find that backpack with the bloody clothes inside. The blood on the clothes matched the blood of Kay Parsons, and it proved that Christopher was the killer. Now, with these findings, the death penalty was taken off the table for Becky, but it was still a possibility for Christopher. And again, another example of Becky throwing her own son under the bus. Now, when Christopher heard that his mother had given up information on the clothes, and when the DNA on the clothes came back as a match to having Kay's blood, as well as Christopher's DNA on it, Christopher pled guilty to murder. And because both of those death penalties were now taken off the table with Christopher's plea of guilt, they both were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, the general takeaway in this case is that even though Christopher was guilty in this case, and there's no escaping that fact, Christopher committed the act of the kill, Becky was really the mastermind behind all of this. She manipulated her son and did whatever she could to get what she wanted, which in this case was David. She felt like if she could get Kay out of the picture, then her and David could live happily ever after. And she didn't care who she had to get rid of in the process, whether that was her own sons or whether that was Kay Parsons. She had portrayed herself as being Kay Parsons' best friend, next door neighbor. They were close as ever. She was asking police after Kay's attack, "How is Kay?" She raced to be at Kay's bedside. However, she never cared about anything else other than herself. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this case. I'm also curious to hear your positioning on where you believe Michael falls in this case. I know we talked earlier that there was glass found in Michael's shoe. However, it came out later on that Christopher was really the one that was the sidekick beside his mom, Becky, throughout all of this planning. But I'm curious to know if you believe Michael had knowledge of this as well. Maybe he wasn't a part of it, but maybe he knew something about it. Maybe he knew nothing about it. However, I wonder if there was ever any knowledge on his front regarding what was going on. So I'm curious to know your thoughts on that. But with that being said, you guys, it's going to be all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host. Make sure you go ahead, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. Like I mentioned, all the links to the exclusive episodes, the Patreon, can be found in the description box below. I will be back next week with a brand new one for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.